We are 22 weeks away from week 0, which means 23 weeks away from week 1 when Clemson plays Georgia in Atlanta. Today, we're going to talk about week 3 of college football. Welcome to Clemson Football Live. You know what? I did a video a couple of days ago, and I was like, I know this whole lawsuit thing with the ACC is going on, but let's just talk football right now. This is a great example of how football is really, college football is really an escape for all of us from the everyday life, a stress relief and so on. And so you get into the lawsuits, you're like, man, I just, at first it's kind of interesting. And then after it, it's like, okay. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. Hope you'll subscribe. Hope you'll pass this along. Remember, it's free, so I do appreciate it. Now, as I said, 22 weeks from today, you're like, man, that's a long time out. Well, when I did a video about 3 weeks ago, it was, 25 or 26 weeks ago. In fact, I think I started this at 26 weeks to week 0 or something like that. And the truth is, college football will be upon us before we know it. That week 0, when there's nothing really no really great teams are playing other than Florida State and Georgia Tech playing in Dublin, Ireland. That'll be interesting. DJ will get to play his very first game for Florida State in Ireland. So anyway, let's dive into week 3 of the college football season. Now today I'm going to be using FBS schedules as I always do. And I want to remind you that Clemson will be off. They'll have a bye week for week 3. And so Clemson at this point will have already played Georgia. They'd already played Appalachian State. They'll have this bye week, and then after that, they will play on the 21st against NC State. Grayson McCall, KC Concepcion, and NC State. So the month of September is not easy for Clemson whatsoever. And then 2 weeks from this week that we're discussing, the weekend of the 14th, Clemson plays against, is it Florida State? No. They play Stanford, and then on October the 5th, they play at Florida State. So in their first 5 games, they have Georgia, NC State, and Florida State. Not too easy. So the meat of the season is at the beginning. I wish those roles were a little different, but let's dive right into the schedule. Now, here's the Thursday night game: Northwestern State at South Alabama, Arizona State at Texas State. And we're like, who cares? At week 3, we're probably at the place now to where we really don't care about these games. As to where, if we were talking about week 0, week 1, we might watch this Thursday night matchup. But probably not at this point. So let's move on to Friday night's game. Arizona at Kansas State. This is an interesting game because Kleiman's done a very good job at Kansas State. Kansas State and Kansas, they're tough jobs. All right. Now, Kansas State has had a lot more success over the past 30 years, excuse me, than Kansas. Why? Well, Bill Snyder. Bill Snyder did what he did at Kansas. And what's so funny is that old man retired, and then he came back and took over the team and still did quite well, considering he was 9,000 years old. Bill Snyder can coach football. Bill Snyder is one of those guys that I call a real football coach. If you have to have superstar talent at almost every position for you to win, you're probably more of a PlayStation game manager coach than you are an actual coach. So, and I'll tell you this, there's a lot of those in college football, and they're being paid a lot of money. A ton of money. So, a guy like Bill Snyder, real football coach. Chris Kleiman, he hasn't messed up anything. He's keeping his team in the top 25, top 20, sometimes top 15. Arizona, they lost their coach to, I believe it was Washington. What's that guy's name? Jed something? I'd have to look it up. But the coach, I'm going to look it up while I'm talking to you. Washington Huskies coach, football. What's his name? Oh goodness, Jed Fish. Jed Fish was the head coach at Arizona. One at Arizona. A good friend of mine that I work with. He lives in Tucson. Went to school at Arizona. He didn't even know that. I'll tell you how detached they are from college football because it's been so bad at Arizona. He did not know that they were doing well this year. I was the one who told him, hey man, your team is doing really good because they're waiting on basketball season. The football team has underperformed so many times it's ridiculous. Even when they were on the front of Sports Illustrated, this is the year they contend for a national championship. No. I remember that during the 90s. And Arizona, I told him, I said, Arizona's looking good. Jed Fish was the reason why, but I believe they replaced him with a guy from San Jose State, which that's far from an easy job. But he went in, he's coaching them. This is probably preseason rankings. I don't know who this is tied to. Might be Lindy's, Athlon, I don't know. Let's move on. Saturday, we get into Saturday's game. Appalachian State at East Carolina. Let me tell you something. I looked at potentially going to the East Carolina-Appalachian State game last year because I wanted to see the Appalachian State Stadium, which later on in the season I did. I got to see Coastal play up there. It was a Tuesday night. It was really odd. But I told you, Appalachian State is one of the prettiest areas to go see a game. And it did not disappoint. Well, last year, I wanted to see the East Carolina game. East Carolina was coming all the way from Greenville, North Carolina. You know, they're East Carolina coming to Western North Carolina. And the game was sold out like that. And from what I can remember, this game it might be sold out as well. Appalachian State, their last game, they just played us, so they have this road game thing going on. They just played at Clemson. Now they're going to play at East Carolina. It's going to be a fun game. But believe it or not, it seemed, and folks, if you're from either school and you're like, this idiot doesn't know, you're right, I don't know. But it seems like there's a really good rivalry between these two, whether that is historical or whether it's just recent history. Next up, we have Boston College at Missouri. Drinkwitz is a guy that I'm trying to figure him out. I mean, he coached for one season at Appalachian State and they did great. The guy can coach football. He's a really individual character. He doesn't have the persona of just your regular college football coach. He's kind of got some quirky ways about him. I've got some quirky ways about me, so I can understand. But I haven't really paid attention to their recruiting, but he has done very well at Missouri. You're in the SEC. Missouri is not, when you look at the SEC as a whole, recruits, big-time recruits, and I know they have the 5-star, what's his last name, Burden the third, whatever. Everybody's got a hyphenated name where they're the third or they're the fourth or, the junior, senior, junior, the fourth, the 17th. Everybody's doing that now. You used to not see that. In fact, I'm going to change my name to Brian Knight the 7th, even though I'm not. It's going to be cool, guys. It's going to look good on a shirt. I'm going to wear one of their shirts that's in memorandum, but I'm still alive. Anyway. The coffee's just hitting different this morning. Boston College is going to play them. Bill O'Brien, he takes over. Bill O'Brien can coach football. And if Bill O'Brien stays at Boston College and he can adapt to the transfer portal, NIL, recruiting in the players that will come to Boston College is a very good school. In the next 2 or 3 years, Boston College could be a team that you're going to have to take more seriously. I think Hafley is a really good coach. It's just Boston College is not an easy job. So we'll see how that works out. It's going down Colorado at Colorado State. We know last year what happened. Those two teams going back and forth. The coaches taking, little shots at one another. But at the end of the day, this game is not important in the grand scheme of things. I think that the whole Colorado mystique of having one of the greatest players to ever play in the NFL and one of the greatest players to play in college football as the head coach, the whole Dion thing, it's actually wore off quite a lot quicker than what I thought. So, I mean, this time last year, you couldn't go to a restroom. You couldn't go to a restroom without hearing about the Colorado Buffalo. And it's like, dude, I'm in an old folks' home trying to take a dump. And I'm hearing about Prime and how they're going to, contend for this, that, and the other. Now, did he do a good job versus the other years of Colorado football? Yes, absolutely. He did. He won 4 or 5 more games than what they did last year, which they only won, or the year before. They won only one game the year before. Anyway, Maryland at Virginia, an old ACC rivalry. I wonder how Tony Elliott's going to do it. How long they're going to be patient with him. Okay, I don't know. Virginia is not an easy job. Bronco Mendenhall going there and doing what he did. We think about the George Welsh years with the Barber twins. Here's the thing about George Welsh. He's over there on the sidelines picking that big nose on live camera. For those of you out there who was watching this video and you're like, hey, I'm 20, 25 years old. I have no clue who you're talking about. Go to YouTube. Well, finish this video. Go to YouTube. Type in George Welsh, Virginia, picking his nose. And I hadn't even done it. I guarantee you'll find it. Just digging he had a nose too. If you are a nose picker, George Welsh had the nose to pick. And he just stand over there and just dig. Anyway, George Welsh could coach football. That'll be an interesting game. Michael Oxley up there. He doesn't have Tagovailoa anymore. We'll see how this goes. I think that kid from NC State, MJ Morris, who really did very well, and then he stopped playing because he's like, well, I'm going to transfer out. He was irritated because Brennan Armstrong had transferred in, and there's a lot of nuance there. Brennan Armstrong ended up leaving. MJ Morris ended up taking over. He won some games. He's like, I can do better than this. But he leaves NC State and he goes to Maryland. Unless they're paying him an ungodly amount of money, I really don't think that was a good move, but what do I know? I'm just a guy who has to, think for the long term and pay bills. Yeah. Notre Dame at Purdue. Notre Dame, we see this whole number 5 Notre Dame thing. If I am Marcus Freeman, I'm going into season 3. Last year was better than the year before. The year before was just a disaster. Yeah, it was his first year, but when you look at the games that they lost, you just sit there and you go, how did that happen? And then last year they were doing really well, and then things it didn't end as well as it could have. But hey, he's now got Riley Leonard. He's got some other players up there. Who knows? I just don't see number 5, folks. When I think of my top 5 right now, just right off the top of my head, not married to it, could change my opinion tomorrow. Notre Dame's not in it. Playing at Purdue. They shouldn't, on paper, they shouldn't blow that game, but hey. Oklahoma State at Tulsa. Does that not sound like a game that Tulsa would win for some reason? I know nothing about Tulsa football right now. But Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, he's been there for years. I'm 40. Excuse me. He's been there, now he's gone. and he's been there. Excuse me, he's not gone. He's still there. It's just I just don't see the intensity that was there. Let's keep going. Ole Miss at Wake Forest. That'll be a bloodbath. Tulane at Oklahoma. Tulane with a new head coach at Oklahoma. Brent Venables this year, that he won against Texas last year. They were undefeated. Everything was looking good, and then they lost some games they shouldn't have lost. And you hear me talk about this all the time. If you want to see a team properly rebuild, and go pay attention to it. Seriously, forget me. You're like, Brian, I don't like you. I think you're an idiot. But what? That's fine. That's fine. It hurts. No, it actually doesn't. But go look at teams who rebuilt over time. Teams that they rebuilt and then they were really solid. As long as the coach stayed there, they were really, really solid. They ended up winning the games they were supposed to win. They started winning most of the toss-up games that between them and the other team, anybody can win. And then the games they were supposed to get throttled, they actually played very well in. Even if they lost, they played really, really well. What that means is the team as a whole, they're progressing. The culture of, and we hear culture, I get so sick and tired of hearing about culture because a lot of people misuse culture. And there's a bad taste in, especially if you work in the corporate world or if you work at a business, you get sick and tired of hearing about culture because a lot of times it's just a bunch of hogwash. But when you have actually a really good culture that focuses on building good players, but also you realize the reason that you're there. You're there to win football games. It's both. You can't divorce it. If you do, that's a poor culture. So, you keep those two together. You'll see that those teams, they have longevity. They recruit better. They don't lose that many players. You're going to lose players to the transfer portal. Now, with people dangling money in front of these players, you're going to lose players, okay? Because these are 18 to, well, with all these extra years given due to medical and that virus from 4 years ago, we have players in the league, 7 years now. So they could be 25, 6 years old. But especially the younger ones, the ones that are not grandpas, they're going to go wherever the money goes, even if it's bad for their career in the long run. They can't think right now about, they only think about right now, they don't think about later. But anyway, you will retain a lot of the teams if you build that culture. The thing about Oklahoma is last year they beat Texas, everybody was happy. They almost lose a game right after that they shouldn't have lost, and then they lost some games that they did. Brent Venables is brilliant. I expect him to correct some of those wrongs and move on. Hey, before I go any farther, I hope you'll hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Hey, if you like what I'm doing, I hope you'll subscribe. It is free. There's a lot of you who consistently watch me and you haven't subscribed. And you're like, how can you tell? Because, well, look at this. Truett Graves. Hey, Truett, what's going on? Do you see that little symbol right there? That means he's subscribed. Pretty sure it means that. Truett, I'm glad you're here. Where do you honestly feel that Clemson will be going, the SEC or the Big Ten? Those are the only viable options. I would see the Big Ten. Transparently, the SEC doesn't. I mean, they have Georgia an hour and 20 minutes away from Clemson. And then, of course, South Carolina's a little over 2 hours from Clemson. So the Big Ten has absolutely no representation in the Southeast. Also, they're building the Super Conference. The only hiccup there is if the lawsuit doesn't create some type of way out for Clemson, the only way to get out of this thing would be to appeal to ESPN. And my question is, why would ESPN let them out of a contract only for them to go to their competition, and that's the Big Ten? I call it the competition because the Big Ten has, they have a contract with basically every other network other than ESPN and ABC. That's something to think about. So, let's see. When the dust settles in this fiasco, where will Clemson end up? Big Ten. Justin Parrott. Go Tigers from Lake Marion in South Carolina. Howdy, everybody. Thank you, Justin Parrott, down there at Lake Marion. Let's keep going. By the way, if you want to support the channel on a monthly basis, there's a join button below the video, unless you're on an iPhone. If you're on an iPhone, you're probably not going to see the join button. I have no clue why. But there's a $3 tier and a $5 tier. The only difference between them is whether you want to support the channel, $3 or $5 per month. Parker Henderson said it best. I believe John Setton even alluded to it as well. You don't even notice it coming out. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, you appreciate that I'm just an independent guy out here, right or wrong. I give my opinion. Sometimes I'm wrong. I have strong opinions, but I'm not married to them, meaning that if I realize that I'm wrong, I'm going to turn around and say, hey, I'm wrong. I try to do that, but I don't have some network telling me what to and what not to say. So if you like that and you want to support the channel, and it's so affordable, I ask that you do that. I do appreciate. I just appreciate you being here. At least subscribe, throw a comment below the video, say hello. I'm glad you're here. Let's keep going. So we have UConn at Duke. That's just a weird game. It's a weird game. Alabama at Wisconsin. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, how's he going to do? The whole Caden Proctor thing going down this week. I want to do a little more research before I say anything on that particular deal. But what I will say is that's the reason why everybody hates the transfer portal. Whatever is going on there, I can tell you a player going back and forth between teams within no time. If I'm seeing the time frame correctly, that's why everybody flips out over this. So anyway, moving on from that, Virginia Tech at Old Dominion. They're like, Brian, why do you bring that up? I'll tell you why I bring it up. Virginia Tech and Old Dominion has this weird history. Virginia Tech, you think of Beamer ball and everything, but if you really go back to the Frank Beamer years, and I'm going to say something that's going to piss off some people, and I'm just going to say this. Frank Beamer was a good head coach, and they were tough to play, but they were not consistent national championship contenders. They were not. They had the 1 year with Michael Vick, and that was an incredible team. With that said, they were a good team, but they were not as great as everybody said they were. They were a very tough team to play, but they were not great. Old Dominion has beat them so many times, or played close with them so many times, and Old Dominion, it's just, oh my goodness, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. I don't even care if Virginia Tech owns the series. I'm saying of recent 15-plus years, Old Dominion has been a headache for them, whether they've won or lost the game against Virginia Tech. And that really tells you where the program has really went for VT. We'll see how things are turning. It seems to be turning for the better. For South Carolina fans, Coastal Carolina at Temple. Coastal Carolina, I'm afraid the program is going down. Losing Grayson McCall was a big deal, and they have some good players there. I've enjoyed my time going to games there. It's a small stadium. It's right there, right on the road. Like you're driving through Conway, heading to South Myrtle Beach, Surfside, that area, and boom, here's this nice little stadium. Not a bad seat in the house. You should check it out. Memphis at Florida State. Mike Norvell's former team coming to town, playing against DJ and the boys. BYU and Wyoming, I guess the battle of the pretty areas. Both stadiums are in pretty areas, so I guess that's the only thing that really to talk about there. Keep going. Let's see what other games we have for this week 3. You're seeing some crappy games here. Yeah. Let's get on down here. Washington State, and Washington. These two teams playing. This is a former conference game. That's what's so crazy. Former conference game. Washington is now in the Big Ten, and it's just weird. It just really is weird. Washington State started off pretty well, and then things didn't go too well for them after that. Cam Ward, he transferred. Right off the top of my head, I believe Miami. Pretty sure about that. Texas A&M at Florida. Florida has probably the toughest schedule in the country. I have not looked at the rankings. I've just looked at their schedule. It is outrageous. Poor Billy Napier. this, it's not that I don't think that he's a good. I, I don't think he's a bad coach, but I think that this was just not a good fit. And Florida has been questionable since Urban Meyer left. They had a good season here, good season there, but overall, Florida has not been that scary, treacherous, imposing their will football team like they were then. So they have Mike Elko in his first year at Texas A&M, going to Florida. I will be shocked if Billy Napier is still the head coach after about Game 6 or Game 7. And if they get shellacked by a few teams early on, it'll be before that. He'll be gone. He'll be gone. I mean, it's sad, but anyway. Georgia at Kentucky. You know, I found out this past year when we played Kentucky in the bowl game. Kentucky fans, and I heard this from my brother-in-law, who is a Tennessee grad, by the way, that Kentucky fans, they never learn that Stoops, who, by the way, is paid millions of dollars to win like 8 games. He's paid a ton of money to win like 8 games at Texas, or not Texas A&M. I don't know what went on between he and Texas A&M, but anyway, he's paid a. I just got to thinking about him in Texas A&M and said that, but no, at Kentucky he has paid a lot of money just to win about 8 games. And they got, not all of them, but the ones that interacted with me, the majority of them was really mouthy. You know, you would expect that from Georgia. Georgia, if you encounter Georgia fans, SEC dog, one of the best trash talkers around, he stirs the pot. I've never seen SEC dog, but I guarantee you there's a mischievous look that's on his face that never ever leaves. Because he likes to stir the pot. I always interact and love it and laugh and all this bunch of stuff. But Georgia fans, they are obnoxious. They'll tell you that they're obnoxious. But when they come to play football, they consistently are, I mean, especially now that Kirby's there. Kirby Smart is the face of college football right now. Since Saban's gone, and since Sweeney's having to find his way again, after hiring a bunch of first-timers to coach his offense, he's no longer the face of college football. Kirby is. Kirby's running a machine down there. But when you look at Georgia's a scary team, so they're going to talk trash. Good grief, they even talked trash when they wasn't that great. Kentucky, on the other hand, man, they got mouthy. We played a bad game against them. Was down by 11 points. And still managed to come back and beat them. And my brother-in-law, once again a Tennessee grad, he said, that's par for the course, my friend. That's what they do. Oregon at Oregon State. Oregon at Oregon State. A former Pac-10 game. They're only, 45 minutes, 50 minutes from one another? Corvallis to Eugene. You've got Oregon, Dan Lanning. Those guys can play. Dylan Gabriel. Dante Moore is sitting behind him, which is kind of weird. Don't be shocked if he transfers out after the spring game. You're like, Brian, he just transferred in. That doesn't matter. Who cares? Oregon at Oregon State. The artist formerly known as Oregon State, Jonathan Smith, is gone. A lot of the talent, or some of the talent, is gone. If not all of it, I haven't looked at their roster, but I'm making an assumption that I feel quite comfortable making. Oregon State was a tough job anyway, and even Jonathan Smith left his alma mater to go to Michigan State. He saw the writing on the wall. Oregon's going to, unless something stupid happens to Oregon, they're going to murder them. LSU at South Carolina. You know, Brian Kelly is one of those guys. He can win some big games, and he can get you to the national championship, or he can get you to the playoff. But Brian Kelly cannot get you over that hump. And there's a lot of teams out there who would love to have that. They would love to have that problem of, hey, guys, we've only won, we can't get past the 8-win mark. We can't get past the 9-win mark. Clemson was there for many, many, many years. Many years. But a program like LSU, who could go out and hire whoever they want to, I don't know. South Carolina, who will be their quarterback? I haven't looked at their roster. I think it's that Sewell kid. He's a sophomore or redshirt freshman. I don't know, but I know last year was his true freshman year. So I don't know if they redshirted him. Yeah, kid's talented. He's out of Florence. He's thick. He's an athlete. He can play. I don't know if Luke Doty will be their quarterback. I don't know what's going on there. I need to look at their roster. But they did hire Dave Shula, former Alabama head coach. The guy that Nick Saban replaced. He's on staff at some capacity now. LSU should win that game, but you just never know with these Brian Kelly teams. Vanderbilt, Georgia State should win that. Utah State, Air Force at Baylor. Dave Aranda, does he get fired this year? He's one of the top paid assistants, within the past 7 or 8 years. Then he became the head coach at Baylor. I think he had, one good year? It's right off the top of my head. And it hasn't been that great. Have UTEP at Liberty, former Coastal Carolina coach Jamie Chadwell. He got his team undefeated last year, got them to the Fiesta Bowl, which they should have never been in, and Oregon absolutely throttled them. That's what I dislike about having teams go to a big bowl game. That, they've had a successful season, but they shouldn't have been in that big of a bowl game. Because the only thing that people will think of when they think of Liberty football in 2023 is how they got throttled in the bowl game. And that's just how it works. TCU, they won they won. No, not even close. They won their way into the national championship. And Georgia beat them 65-7. Nobody thinks about that season other than 65-7. You might have some, what I like to call, optimistic soccer mom type who sees unicorns and cotton candy everywhere they turn because that's just who I am, man. That's great. That's great. People should not just be a bunch of pessimistic jerks, but at the same time, reality is reality. If I get a paper cut, it's going to hurt. If someone punches me in the face, it's going to hurt. I might even black out according to who's hitting me. Losing your wallet is a terrible thing. Getting food poisoning is one of the worst things that'll happen to you. You're like, why are you naming all these bad things? Because it's reality. Reality is nobody thinks about that TCU team as being successful now. They got beat by 58 points, not in any bowl game. Not in just any game, the game, the national championship. So Liberty losing that game so bad really hurt them. Jamie Chadwell is the guy to lead them. I just think the thing with Jamie, he needs more time there. Obviously, that was his first year to do what he did in year one. That's the thing. Jamie Chadwell, if you want to see him get to a place to where he's like an elite coach, he has to hire the most brilliant defensive mind and then build under the defensive tree of coaches, under the defensive coordinator. He has to build if he can build a great defensive coaching staff, watch out. I don't care if he's at Liberty. I don't care if he's at South Carolina. I don't care if he's at Michigan. He will do very, very well. Chadwell is an incredible coach. It's just like most really good offensive head coaches, the defense is just questionable. And so, anyway, first year he did fantastic. Got him to the flipping Fiesta Bowl. So, all right, folks, this concludes week 3 of college football. Way too early. We have the spring game coming up. We have the spring. Let me see. We have the spring game coming up 2 weeks from today, which will be April the 6th, 1 o'clock in Death Valley. We know who we want to see. We know we want to see Sammy Brown. We want to see Bryant Wesco. We want to see how Peter Woods looks out on the edge. Last I heard, somebody told me that Cade was in a boot, so we might see Christopher Vizina in there. I don't know. So either way, it's going to be fun. I look forward to seeing how the offensive line looks since they've spent more time with Matt Luke. Still, I'm just telling everyone, Matt Luke is incredible, but he's not a magician. He's not a magician. You need to give him some time. He's having to rewire those guys. He's having to get them into doing the proper things. And I'm just telling you, excuse me, the game is so fast, they're going to react to the way they've been taught for years now to react. And that's tough. But I've heard from someone who said, man, that the offensive line is playing really well. We'll see. I'm gonna leave it there. I hope so, and Luke is incredible, but I'm just trying to temper the expectations there. Bryant Wesco looks amazing, Justin Parrott says. A lot of people are talking about him, talking about how good, he's playing. TJ Moore, he's a regular enrollee, if that's the term. He's not an early enrollee. We'll see how that works out. Hopefully all of this it gives Cade more time to be able to fix some of the poor habits that he's picked up because of all the chaos around him. Anyway, folks, if you like what I'm doing, I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll pass this along to your friends. If you want to join on a monthly basis, there is a join button below this video, $3 or $5. If you're not seeing it, it's probably because you're on an iPhone. That's really weird. Also, I am joining the College Huddle. The College Huddle will launch in April sometimes. So they asked me if I wanted to represent Clemson, and I said, absolutely. I'll represent Clemson. Nothing's changing here. I still own the show. They don't own rights. They're not calling me up going, hey, man, we heard you say something, and, we got together as a, HR conglomerate, even though we're not, and we want you not to say that. They're not doing that. I have free reign of my show, and so that's really, really, it's a really good thing. So I've really enjoyed working with them just so far. They've been really cool to work with. So, folks, 2 weeks from spring practice, about 22 weeks, 23 weeks from the start of the season. Yes, my skin is crawling. Either or and whatever. I'm just saying stuff now. Words are coming out of my mouth. It's always good to be a Tiger. Go Tigers.